joining us, come in. I'd like first of all to get clarity. You want to speak to us as a former minister, as a former MP, or as a voter and a taxpayer? Moses.
Thank you, Eric. I will speak and then you can decide as who. Because the facts are just the facts. But let me say that I rarely join spaces, but I saw this topic and it's one topic that is very close to my heart. And I think that the topic that we are discussing today is at the heart of all the issues that the country is grappling with. I would really have wished even to have this conversation on a wider audience, because this is really the crux of the matter. So I have followed the discussion, and I just want to say some few things. One, you asked a question: does the public get a chance to say what they want in a budget? And the truth of the matter is, even before the budget policy statement that you mentioned, we have a chance in the sector working groups. Remember, the budget policy statement is a product of sector working groups, and the sector working groups is really the beginning point of the budget process. But there's still other things which I think the gentleman from the Institute of Public Finance can tell you. There are still other opportunities that exist before then. For example, there exists a checkpoint where public can interrogate the previous budget spending. And I think that is important, because what happens is that in this country, we come from one budget cycle, we finish, we go to another, and there is no audit of the previous one. Somewhere within the budget cycle, I can't remember exactly where, but I think James or the expert can be able to look at that. There exists an opportunity for people to say, how did we spend the money that was available the previous year? How was that appropriated? So I think that's the first one. But I think the most critical one, and I think that one of historical perspective is very important, because it ought to inform subsequent budget making. But nonetheless, before we develop the budget policy statement, these sector working groups, they normally start somewhere in KICC. I know of a lady called Mora. She must be in her 60s or something, or thereabout. She's the only person who goes to all these sector hearings. And the kind of conversation now that we have, if you could have the same level of conversation within the sector working groups, there's a lot. And I'm not saying that there's a guarantee that if people raise their voice within the sector working groups, that is going to, that the same is going to be catered for. But I'm told by my Ruya friends that there's a Ruya saying that someone who beats a stone says, even if the stone does not answer, on the very minimum, the stone has heard. So I think it's important to look at this process of the interventions that the public can make way before the 15th of February deadline for submission of the budget policy statement into Parliament. Then now fast forward to 30th of April. 30th of April is the date set by the PFM for submission of estimates and submission of the finance bill to Parliament. And I remember when I was a member of the budget committee, we engineered the change. I think in 2018 or thereabouts, I can't remember, 2017. Where we said before the the estimates and the finance bill were being submitted on different dates. And then we said, because we spend the money that we receive, something before, what was happening is that we pass the estimates, and then after passing the estimate, then we look at the finance bill. And of course, we have said we were going to spend 3 trillion or 4 trillion. Then that is passed. Then now we go back to the finance bill and say we can't release that particular money. That's when, in the wisdom of parliament, we brought a convergence between the submission of the finance bill and the estimates into parliament on the 30th of April. So that was aligned, and so therefore now we are able to look at revenue and expenditure at the same time. So the correct answer is yes, there exists an opportunity. Two, it has not been utilized by Kenyans at all. I'm not saying that even if they turned up, it could have made any impact, but it is important, to be on the right side of history, that many Kenyans do participate in that process. Probably with wisdom of hindsight and from what has happened is that probably as a country we need to be much more, to move with the times, and this public participation should look at more modern, ways of participation to enable it could be even cheaper anyway. If you can bring this thing to the public scrutiny, maybe through digital, through social media, through that, probably something that from what has happened that I think should be able to be looked at. I will revisit that soon. Let me move to the analysis of the supplementary budget as has been presented. And just to mention, because I was making some calls to consult people who are in the know, as some of you are making the contributions. And let me take the issue of transfer to county government. And I think James or someone has correctly said that we moved from 401 billion to 410. And for me, that was striking odd, because when we announced austerity measures, we did agree that everybody has to take a haircut, including county government. So this revelation for me was startling. So I've made some consultation with some people and said, how can we come from 401 to 410 if really everybody supposed to take a haircut on the budget? And the reality is, I don't know. I've had the figures of 120 in terms of the net down from 170. I really want to shed some light on that. The unknown to Kenyans, the impact of rejection of the finance bill, the one which was supposed to be somewhere around 350 billion. And then we said we're going to reduce that to 170 so that we borrow the 170 from the markets. And now that the saving has now dropped to 120. But that's only happened. The 170 and the 350 was only part of the story. There's a bigger part of the story. In financial year 2023-2024, we have something we call crossover. And this is one thing that, again, because we don't give a lot of attention to scrutiny of this budget process, that is one item that gets lost all the time. Crossover means, and I think the lady who has contributed last has spoken about something very important, that not everything that gets budgeted gets the money, gets the exchequer. I think that's a very important point. And let me start from that this contribution. In the year 2023-2024, the crossover amount, meaning how much did we cross over with from the other year that we said this was our budget, but we didn't have the money to fund. In 22-23, the previous budget, we crossed over with 77 billion of unmet expectations from budgeted items. We've budgeted all right, but budget is not equal to money. So we crossed over with 77. And then what we do is that when we open the new budget, we call it the first charge. So we tell MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, before you even you look at the money you budgeted for the current year, please look at the people to avoid build up of the pending bills. So we crossed over with 77 billion on our first year of administration, which for me was warning. I did raise that in several forums. But this year, in 23-24, we have crossed over with 250 billion shillings. That's staggering. That means that is the first charge. That means that that's the first thing you appropriate, because you promised me I budget for this road or for that water or for something, and you didn't give me the money. And now the year has passed. So this crossover has got two options. Either it is dropped. We say that after all, maybe there's no likelihood that that money is going to be spent, or two, it is revoted. So what this supplementary budget has done is actually a two-in-one. It's a budget, it's a supplementary budget to cut with in line with the austerity. It's also a supplementary budget to revote some items of the crossover, which said surely you cannot punish people who are already prepared to spend simply because you didn't give them the money. As to how much of the 250 billion gets revoted in this, I don't know. I need to, to do a tooth comb on the supplementary budget. But just to give you an example, the last month of the financial year, Treasury did not send money to counties. So there is an element of the money of the last month that was not sent to counties that has now been revoted into this year because counties are saying we had budgeted for this money. So now the figure, the apparent increase from 408 to 410 is, first of all, we moved from 408 down to, I think, by around 20-30 billion thereabout. But then that has been now undone by the money that we didn't collect, or we didn't get enough money that we didn't send to the counties there. So we really have a two-in-one, and the experts in here can do some number crunching to see how much of the crossover has been revoted and how much that has sort of seemingly diluted, the austerity as has been announced. Let me finish by giving my perspective on austerity generally, or just the holding of expenditure vis-a-vis. And I've had wonderful contributions from people on JSS, on this, on the development budget. Where are we increasing on, where are we having more subtle decreases on recurrent expenditure, as opposed to development expenditure, which is more, which is the gradient is sharper on that, and I totally agree. The reason is very simple, and I'll be very, very, very honest here. The way our budget process is fatally wrong, and I think I've talked about this. You can just Google for all my contribution on for my 8 years that I was a member of the budget committee, that I tried to fix this issue. Not even about my time in government. Our budget process is wrong because I want you to say a prayer. For tonight, you need to say some prayers for the accounting officers. Some people call the principal secretaries, who are seemingly supposedly supposed to be in charge of budget. Unknown to people, the way our budget process works, even our accounting officers, they encounter the budget sometimes the same time with the public. They make their presentations the same way that people are saying, oh, we went for this public participation, it didn't amount for much. It's the same thing even within government. Because when we talk about mandarins, when we talk about, a very deep interest, this for me is something very, very, very dear to my heart. Because the budgets are owned by some characters called CFOs, the chief finance officers. And what will happen is that the CFOs will do the budget, then present to some desk officer somewhere in Treasury. So then Treasury will compile everything. By the time even that budget comes to cabinet, first of all, the timelines are very squeezed. Oh, we have got this constitutional timeline. We have to comply with 15th of February for BPS and so the whole budget process is made at the at gunpoint. You can say that. And that gunpoint is a gunpoint of timelines. And if it is a problem for the public and for people, people who can be able to interrogate, it's even a bigger problem for people within government itself. And that's something that is, we cannot fix, these issues until we fix that issue. So we've been grappling with something called zero-based budgeting. And I want to refer you to a report that my committee did in I think 2016 under Mutaba Musimi. We had an audit, value audit, something called the value audit of the budget under Mutaba Musimi. Edward Ouko, then as Auditor General, is the one we contracted. That report is publicly available from parliamentary records, so that you can be able to see the value for money audit of budget, not just from a national government, but especially an audit of devolution and a question of whether devolution is answering to the needs of Kenyans. Now, so what needs to be done is because, as I conclude, the issue is what needs to be done. We need to provide more ample interrogation on the expenditure, and especially of recurrent expenditure. I am now from this conversation reminded of the terms of reference that we gave for that committee that's looking on debt, and by reflection from this space, I think it is important to expand the mandate of that team to also have a look at how we come up with our recurrent expenditure, and to give the public a voice on recurrent expenditure. Because as I've been saying, consider again, that's where the animal lies. That's where the problem lies. To go for more modern ways of allowing the public to participate in the budget making process, not just going for some meeting in KICC or whatever spaces like this and digital that need to be brought in space. And three, I have heard of something called Okoa Uchumi something, and I'm assuming that is a combination of several actors and players within the civil society or something like that. And I think that such kind of a meeting of minds need to be expanded to also include those guys in government who are, because otherwise you'll be speaking to yourself out there. I think a mechanism needs to be found whereby those wonderful ideas are also fed into those people who make policy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. James.
Thank you very much, Moses. And first of all, it is